Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Jim Simcoe. Welcome to the podcast. I'm stoked to be here today. You might notice I've changed the office around a little bit. The surfboards are still up there, but now you can see a little bit of the shelf, and that's an area of the office over there that I need to clean. I know some of you, if you're listening to this, you don't get that view, but honestly, you're not really missing much. Okay, listen, today is going to be a very quick podcast. This is a quick podcast because it's something I thought of recently, and I am also selfishly playing music in the office here in a little bit. So I wanted to record this while it's fresh in my mind and while it's fresh in a lot of other people's minds. Recently on Reddit and on LinkedIn and all the different places that I spend time researching people talking about public speaking, fear has really been a big thing that's come up for a lot of people, and how do you handle the fear of public speaking, which is huge for almost everybody, right? Like this is the number one reason people struggle with public speaking. A lot of times it's not their tactics or their strategy or their delivery. It's just that they're just so afraid to do it. And I used to deal with those things as well, and sometimes I still do. But I want to talk about that a little bit today. I want to give you 3 broad things to think about as it relates to public speaking. And by all means, this is not a complete list, because public speaking fears, there's about 1 billion ways to handle them. So this is part 1 of probably 5 billion of how to handle public speaking, how to handle your public speaking fears. And there's basically 3 that I'm going to talk about today. So when you think about handling your public speaking fears or your fear of public speaking, the number one thing you can do is to recognize it for what it actually is. So when you are afraid to speak in public, whether it's in a meeting or an actual speech or at a wedding or a happy hour, a birthday party, whatever, social event, whatever it is, a conference, you have to recognize what it is. And really that fear is serious. So it's definitely serious, but it's also probably not dangerous. I mean, if you mess up a speech or you mess up when you meet somebody, it might be embarrassing. You might feel shitty. Your cheeks may fluster. You might stammer or stutter, but it's probably not serious. Like, you're not going to get killed. So I think of it as in terms of surfing, because I surf a lot. And one of the things is when you're surfing really big waves, or you're surfing even decent sized waves, if you fall or if you wipe out, it can be serious. It can be painful. It can definitely be embarrassing. There's been plenty of times that I've wiped out and it's just been totally embarrassing. But at the end of the day, it's probably not super dangerous, right? Now, conversely, if you surf in water like off San Francisco, some of that cold water up there where it's super sharky, or you surf in Africa, South Africa, where it's also super sharky, that's serious and dangerous, because you could wipe out. You could just be paddling out and a shark comes by and chomps or tries to chomp your board or you or whatever. So that's serious and dangerous. But at the end of the day, public speaking is your fear of it. It could be serious, but it's probably not dangerous. So the first thing is to recognize what it is when you're feeling it. And you understand that, okay, look, I'm feeling a lot of fear around public speaking right now, and that sucks, and it's definitely serious. I need to take this seriously. But at the end of the day, it's not dangerous. I'm probably not going to die from this fear. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second way to handle public speaking, and again, these are the first 3 things, and there's probably another 50 things that we'll talk about in the future. But the second way to handle your fear of public speaking is to acknowledge it and move on. So acknowledge it and recognize that it's there, but move on. So the way I do this for me is, if I have those fears in my head, I basically say, I see you, but I'm going anyway. So it's the same thing if you paddle into big surf. You might be scared and you might have fear. When you're out there, you have to go, because a lot of times you can't just paddle in. You got to take the waves. So it's more this way of saying and acknowledging, look, I know you're there, fear, but I'm going to do it anyway. And if you have that mantra in your head where it's, I see you, but I'm going anyway, then that will help you a lot get through your speech or your meeting or whatever it is. And it'll help you really connect with the belief and the confidence in yourself. Is it just acknowledge it. So the worst thing you could do, in my opinion, is pretend it's not there and act that you don't have a fear of public speaking. To me, that's the worst thing you do. Just acknowledge it. Say, like, look, I see it, you're there, and just be matter of fact about it, but I'm going anyway. Like I'm giving my speech anyway. I don't care what happens. Like and then what that also will do subconsciously is it'll minimize that fear for you. So the first one is recognize it for what it is, serious but not dangerous. Number 2 is acknowledge it. Hey, I see you, but I'm going anywhere. I'm going anyway. And number 3, this is the one that I probably use the most, is to put it in perspective. So put every speech, every meeting where you're going to speak, every conference, every social event, all of it, put them all in perspective. And the way I used to do this is when I was giving a speech, because I used to travel the country giving speeches for this real estate company that I worked for. I would think about it and I would go on stage and I'd be in, one time I was giving a speech in Pittsburgh in front of 200 and something people. And I was sick as a dog and I had 102 fever and I could barely talk. And I was just like living on the struggle bus. It was terrible. So I'm sucking down tea before the meeting, doing everything I can. And before I went on, I legit was like, oh shit, like I'm going to bomb this speech. This is going to go terrible because I feel terrible. I can barely concentrate on the material. Like it's going to be awful. And at that point in time, I really put it in perspective and I thought about it and I'm like, okay, what happens if I bomb? Does somebody take all my money away? Does my family disown me? Do my friends stop being my friends? Like what actually happens? And when I was able to put in perspective, like none of these terrible things that I had thought of would ever happen if I gave a terrible speech, then it really just made it easier because it gives you the freedom to mess up the speech. And you can be like, look, if I bomb this, my significant other still loves me. My children still love me. I still have a place to live. Like I still have a car. The electric is still on at my house. I still have running water. All of these things allow you the freedom to like make some mistakes, not shoot for perfection, just shoot for success when you're able to put it in perspective. So 3 things again: recognize when you want to handle your public speaking fears, recognize it for what it is, that it's serious but probably not dangerous. Number 2, acknowledge it. So say, look, I see you, but I'm going anyway. And then number 3 is to put it in perspective. What happens if I bomb? You'll probably find that the answer to that question is it's not going to change your life in a terrible way long term. Will you be embarrassed? Sure. Will you be like, oh shit, this is awful if you bomb? Yeah, you will. Guess what? We all have. So I don't know anybody who's a good speaker who has not had some absolutely horror stories when they've spoken before. So it is not something that I would worry about. If you are in a job or you want to be a speaker or you're in school, you have to eventually you are going to really mess one up. And that's just part of life. That's just part of life. So anyway, thank you for listening. I'll talk to you guys soon.